This December, I wanted to try something new. Every episode this month will be someone else interviewing me. I wanted to shout out and support fellow menopause podcasters. And if you enjoy these episodes, consider also following these women. Today, our guest host is Bria Gadd, aka the Period Whisperer. Bria aims to provide hormonal wellness education and tips for women interested in weight loss and energy gain. She loves to inspire women to become the CEO of their own body while helping them to achieve their goals with less hustle and more simplicity. Enough from me. Now it's over to Bria.
Hey sisters, it is Bria here, your host of the Period Whisperer podcast, and I have a really special treat for you today. I have the amazing Jennifer Harrington on with us, who is a naturopath that specializes in naturally supporting women's transition into menopause, right where we're all at. She's the clinical director of menopausenaturalsolutions and author of From Invisible to Invincible, the Natural Menopause Revolution. And today, I'm so grateful to have you here, Jennifer. She's going to talk to us about nutritional deficiencies during perimenopause, which I know so many of you guys have all these questions on this. It's a really hot topic. And I'm really grateful to have you, Jennifer. So thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation.
It's awesome. It's so nice. More and more, I've been in the wellness industry for about a decade and a half, and more and more I meet women who didn't even know what the menopause transition was or what perimenopause. They never even heard these words. And I was even one of those people. So it's really amazing to connect with women from all over the world. I know you're coming at us here from Sydney, Australia this morning, but it's nice to start to normalize this and spread this message.
I think also the reason why many of us don't know what we're going through is potentially because our mums were all on HRT back then. I go back and I asked my mum and I asked my auntie, what was the transition like for you? And they go, we didn't know because we were on birth control and then switched at some point to HRT and we don't know. So it makes sense then. As little girls growing up, we didn't see our mums or our aunties going through anything.
Crazy. I didn't even think about that as well. I know my mom had a hysterectomy, so it was less of a shift and less of a noticeable thing for her. So, you're right. You hear that is a challenging aspect that I haven't even thought about is we don't know, our parents don't know. And so we weren't exposed to it.
Yeah. But this generation, we certainly are struggling, and there's quite a few reasons why we're having a harder time.
I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, that, why that is. I certainly talk about it plenty on the podcast, but I'd love to hear from you. Why do you think it is such a hard thing let's just define it. Let's define first what perimenopause is, or, premenopause, the menopause transition, whatever you want to call it. Let's define it first.
Okay. So perimenopause is the period of time before menopause. Mm-hmm. And that can be a decade, it can be a few years, it can be longer than a decade. It just depends on the individual woman. Mm-hmm. And it's generally when there is a shift or a change in menstruation, but it doesn't need to be noticeable changes because you can still have a period and not have ovulated. But maybe the period is slightly different. Maybe it's a longer bleed. Maybe it's a shorter period of time between bleeds. Maybe it's a different quality. Maybe the blood is thicker or thinner or clottier. Sometimes there's such subtle little changes that you don't actually recognize you're in the transition. And for other women, it's a slap in the face that all of a sudden they're not sleeping, they're hot flushing, the tolerance to stress is out the window. So we all do it differently. But perimenopause is that period of time beforehand. There is no blood test for it. It's really just signs and symptoms of a shift in hormones. Menopause is defined as 12 months without a period. So that's an easier one to define. It's like, when did you last bleed? Right, 12 months later, if you haven't bled in that time period, today you're in menopause, because it is just that moment in time. And then after that, you're in postmenopause for the rest of your life. And before we move on, I really wanted to add in, this is a normal, natural transition. We go through puberty. That's a normal, natural transition. And menopause is just the reverse of that at the other end of the spectrum.
But I was going to say, I've heard it defined as a reverse puberty, and I loved that. It really helped make, as I have a teenage daughter right now going through puberty, and it really helped me understand it more.
Yeah.
Well, so tell us a bit about, tell us a bit about how you got into this, how you got into, specifically focusing on this area.
Okay, so I actually started off my working life working in television, but I was really struggling with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it was causing a stabbing pain that would drop me to the floor. And sometimes this pain could last for 2 weeks. And it's like, I can't live like this. So off to see my my local primary care practitioner, who put me on the oral contraceptive pill. And I must say, did take away my pain, did regulate my periods, but it changed my mood, it changed my personality. So I went back and we tried, we tried a different one, and the same thing happened. And I went, maybe I'm going up the wrong path looking for different versions of the drug. Maybe I actually need to look for something else. And so I went and saw a naturopath. And can I tell you, my pain was gone, but I was me. But if anything, I was more me because I had more energy and more vitality. And I just loved who I was, that it inspired me so much that I left TV, went back and retrained. And I've been a naturopath ever since. And I just love it. But I primarily started working with women who were also having reproductive conditions like myself. And then that naturally led into fertility as all of these women tried to get pregnant. And then from then, as I started aging, as my patients started aging, we all started going through perimenopause together. So it was just a natural transition, moving up the line into the menopausal transition.
Wow. What did you notice, like how, when you talked about being on birth control, how did that change your mood and your personality that you noticed?
I was, I guess, full of rage and full of anger, and I didn't like who I was. Yeah, just tired and grumpy and angry, I would say. Not a nice person to be around. And yeah.
And as you work now, I'm so glad that you were able to figure that out at that time. So
it was chalk and cheese. I wasn't like that before. I'm like this all of a sudden. No, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I mean, that is what the feeling we can get sometimes with the shift in hormones, whether you're taking hormones or whether it's just your natural shift, you can really get that sense of not feeling like you, right?
Yes, definitely.
One of the hardest parts, I think, for women, especially, going through premenopause, is sort of starting to look in the mirror and not only not recognizing themselves physically, but really just not feeling like themselves emotionally. And it's the tough part. So when you think about or premenopause and perimenopause and how you work with women, what are they experiencing? What are the life limitations that are happening that don't need to be happening?
Oh, well, every woman is different. And there is so many different symptoms, and there's not a right or a wrong way, or no, that can't be perimenopause, or yes, that's got to be perimenopause. But the general gist is fatigue. Everybody is absolutely exhausted, tired. We see a lot of brain fog, a lot of heat, so hot flushes, night sweats, insomnia issues. But even crazy things like itchy ear, itchy skin, burning tongue.
God,
Yeah. So many
even like grinding teeth more, I've noticed in some clients, and you don't even realize until your dentist is like, you're a tooth grinder. Like, what? I've never been a tooth grinder.
Yeah. Or that TMJ pain, that pain that you wake up with in the morning.
Yeah. It's amazing that we don't even recognize like how many things can be tied to the shift.
Well, when you think about it, everything in your body is changing. from an absolute cellular level. It's a transformation. And you can think of it as like a metamorphosis where you're a butterfly stuck in your cocoon trying to get out. Sometimes we need to, like, we don't need to struggle, but sometimes we find that at the end of the road, once we break through the cocoon, once we get out, we evolve. We're now version 2.0. And I generally find that change in a woman, she tends to not stress as much. She doesn't care so much what other people are thinking. She's willing to give things a try that maybe before she was a little bit afraid of. And generally, I find that women can be a little bit, well, cheeky, very joyful and very cheeky. And it's like the weight of the world is lifted off their shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah. Like really stepping into who they are.
Yes. Yeah. But some women need help in that interim, just during the transition phase.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. Here on the podcast, I have the opportunity to talk a lot about lifestyle. And I'm sure you could talk to that as well. But I'd love to dig into this, this area around nutritional deficiencies for women. What do we expect? What do we notice? And what do we do about it?
Well, first of all, it's probably more common than you realize. In a book called The Mineral Fix, Dr. James looked at the research and found that 1 in 3, and this is American research, 1 in 3 Americans have at least 10 mineral deficiencies.
Oh my
So
goodness.
It's not singular nutrition deficiencies, but it's everything across the board. And when we think about what could be causing that, we need to look at other things that aren't the menopausal transition. We need to look at agriculture, the way that we're actually growing our foods, because we get our nutrients from the soil or from the water that is taken up into the plants that we consume. And if the minerals aren't in the soil in the first place, we're not going to be consuming them. We can also look at environmental toxicity. Unfortunately, we live in quite a toxic world these days, and minerals and toxins compete for absorption. So we can look at things like mercury will compete with zinc and selenium for absorption. Iron will compete with calcium for absorption. So if we've got a receptor, it can only bind to one thing. Like we can't have multiple things on there at the same time. So it sort of reduces your ability to uptake those minerals. There's also all these things with diet. So we can look at one end of the spectrum being ultra-processed diet, which don't have nutrients in them in the first place. Yes, they're convenient, but if you're living off them, you're really depleting your body, or you're really limiting your body's ability to get nutrients in the first place. And the other end of the spectrum is we have women that are on I already said ultra-processed diet, but on women who are on really restrictive diets for far too long. So look at things like the FODMAPs diet. It's really limited and restrictive. And for women who need it, it's designed to give their digestive system a break for the short term.
Right.
Generally look at 6 to 8 weeks, but I've met women who've been on it for years. And I'm like, you've really limited the nutrition that you've had over this time. And really, we need to do some solid work on your digestive system so that you can tolerate a wider variety of foods. And in the meantime, maybe we need to look at supplementing so that you're topping up on these nutrients.
Yeah.
And getting back into that with the health of the digestive system, if you've got an inflamed gut, you're not going to be absorbing your nutrients.
Right.
If you're on certain medications like antacids, these are going to reduce your ability to break down food and extract nutrients, especially things like B12. Really, you can't absorb if you're on an antacid. There's so many reasons why we're really depleted.
Yeah. How do you find, what in your experience, how do you notice exercise to impact nutritional deficiencies?
It depends on what kind of exercise they're doing, because if it's a gentle stroll versus CrossFit, then that's a huge change.
Yeah.
I generally find at this time of life, women need to be gentler on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't been doing, let's call it an extreme sport, now is not the time to start, because now we've got issues with collagen reducing. You're more prone to accidents and injuries. We've got potential muscle loss and potential bone loss. But I do love to see a weight bearing component, because when you start looking at resistance exercise, that can help to lock calcium into your bones.
Interesting. Yes, we hear that a lot, don't we? The value of weights and resistance. I like talking about that and normalizing that a little bit more, about the idea of more intense fitness and how it might not be the best time to be doing that. I think also because of that general fatigue that we're feeling. If you are pushing yourself in another area, you are going to notice that suck more of your energy and leave you without later on in the day.
Well, we do definitely use nutrients exercising. Like you use calcium for muscle contraction, magnesium for muscle relaxation. You need coenzyme Q10 to also help with muscular health. You need all your oils for lubrication of your joints. Proteins, you need your amino acids to help with muscle strength. And iron's a big one a lot of women don't necessarily put the connection with. If you're going through perimenopause and you're either having longer periods or spotting in between periods, heavier periods, you're losing more blood, you could be anemic, and exercising actually uses more iron. So you really are at greater need of iron in perimenopause if you tick those boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't, it took me a while to learn that piece, but I have noticed even when I want to go donate blood, I've learned not to have a very intense exercise within a few days of going to donate. Otherwise, there's a significant difference in my hemoglobin, which is where your iron is.
Yeah. But then at the other end of the spectrum, when you're in postmenopause, you're more likely to have iron overload because you're not bleeding every month. And that is where exercise can really help, because I found that women that are regular exercisers are still using their iron, therefore it's not accumulating.
Oh,
Another benefit for you.
You know what? That's amazing to hear, because we focus here a lot on the menopause transition phase, but we're all heading into the actual menopause years. And where this is a time to taper on some of that fitness, it's really nice to know that we can actually dig a little deeper in our future.
Definitely.
That's exciting. How do you find nutritional deficiencies impact our sleep during perimenopause? This is a really common struggle for a lot of women, and I know a lot of women who listen to this show that is just constant.
Yes. So magnesium is going to be one of the key nutritional deficiencies that I see. And I also think of magnesium as the master menopause mineral. Signs of magnesium deficiency can be excessive sweating. So if you're having a lot of hot flushes or night sweats, that could be a part of magnesium deficiency. If you're having any sort of cramps or twitches, some women get crazy eye twitches and it drives them nuts. That's magnesium deficiency. Or maybe it's muscle cramps or tremors, or just your muscles aren't working properly. Can be insomnia, which is what led me to here in the first place. Can be restless legs, can be headache, lower tolerance to stress.
This is all from magnesium deficiency, you're saying? All of these.
So that's why I call it the master menopause mineral, because the signs and symptoms match those of the menopausal transition.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I know, and maybe you can clarify this for us. You can go into a health food store and look for magnesium, and there's several different kinds of magnesium. How do we know which one to be choosing for us in these years?
Okay. So first of all supplements come with cautions, interactions, and contraindications. So if you are on pharmaceutical medication, just get your pharmacist or your doctor to check before you start taking anything new.
Good.
That being said, magnesium is one of the safest ones. The most likely problem you're going to run into is diarrhea if you have the wrong form or if you have too much.
Okay.
There are many ways there's many ways to add to your magnesium level. You can look at adding in some extra dark green leafy vegetables, probably one of my preferred food sources. You can look at really enjoyable ways like an Epsom salt bath. That is good on so many levels. It's taken me time when we're so busy looking after everyone else just to shut the door and say, right, half an hour, I'm off duty. I'm just going to have my Epsom salt bath.
Yeah, unwind.
Yeah, you can get creams. Like I've recently changed my moisturizer to be a magnesium cream just to really rub the magnesium into my muscle, into my leg. Well, it's great because it absorbs directly into your muscles where you need it versus being oral and being systemic.
I didn't even know you could get a magnesium cream.
You can get oils, you can get creams. It all depends on why you're taking it, because if you're rubbing it into your legs to help with your migraines, might not work. I don't think it's going to make it. You're probably better to have an oral one in those cases, but your skin is highly absorbent. With that in mind, you've also got to think about if you are putting a cream on, what else is in the cream? Because your skin's going to absorb the good and the bad. And remember, earlier on we spoke about how toxins compete for absorption. So you want to make sure that it's a clean product so you have a better opportunity of utilizing the magnesium and not taking on board any of the preservatives or anything else that might be in the cream.
And do you have a simple guideline that you follow for yourself or that you share with your clients around, what makes something clean?
I tend to use the Environmental Working Group. I don't know if you've had a look. They've got a Skin Deep app where you can put in a product and it'll grade it. It'll let you know. That's probably a good link to share.
Okay, good.
Also, because I'm in Australia, you're in the US.
Different. I have a lot of Canadian listeners. Yeah, European listeners. Yeah, so it's going to be different. But we can use this Skin Deep app anywhere then.
It is a US app. Therefore, it's going to have a lot more of the North American products on there.
Okay.
But I still find things in it on Australia. It's just sometimes I find things are on there. Sometimes I find things aren't on there. And then I look at other resources. I've also got a book called The Chemical Maid. And they've also got an app. And it's a little book that you put in your handbag. So when you go shopping, you pick up a food and you're like, what is that ingredient?
Yeah.
You can then look it up and it rather gives you a smiley face or an orange face or a red face.
No, and what's that app called? Sorry?
I'm pretty sure it's The Chemical Maid.
The Chemical Maid. Oh, I'm very excited.
I'll look it up afterward and give you the link to put in the show notes.
Incredible. I'm so excited. I know a lot of people will love that because it's, it makes life easier. You don't realize until you start to look at ingredients, how many ingredients you don't understand. And it is, I always encourage people, it's important to just have a little Google at least. So this makes it a bit more streamlined for people to understand what it is that's actually going in the body. And when you talk about, the toxic load, do you find in general, there's a specific, most intense products that you recommend? When it comes to organic foods, they often have a list of the dirty dozen of the highest ones.
But that's the Environmental Working Group. That puts out that list.
They put that out. Okay, then I do know them.
Yeah. So for the listeners, if they haven't heard of it, they do a clean 15 and a dirty dozen. And if you just avoid the dirty dozen, you've reduced your pesticide load by 80%. And I know not everyone can afford to eat 100% organic all the time.
Right.
So this is something I do recommend if it's easier. And the other way to look at it is the clean 15. These are foods that are less likely to have a high pesticide burden and they're safe to eat in a conventional form.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. And so this is all foods, but is there one that we can point to for people or that of that is more for, skincare products specifically, or I guess, or cleaning products? We don't realize the impact of that as well on us.
Yeah, I think you better to go back to the environmental working group because the brands running through my head might not be available in
Of course.
the US.
Okay. That's awesome. We will definitely check that out. Amazing. Another thing I often hear from my clients is, a sort of a frequent urination at night. Is that something we can tie to perimenopause?
You could do. If this is something that's new, I would actually check your bedroom for mold because there is a link with mold causing overactivity of the bladder. So if you're not really urinating excessively during the day, if it's just at night, I would be looking at what's happening. It could be that maybe you're drinking the bulk. You've been so busy all day that you've got home in the evening and drank the bulk of your fluids then. That makes sense. Or if it is really overnight that you're seeing the increase in frequency, just check out your bedroom for mold.
Yeah.
If it is there, I would look at that. But definitely the hormonal change can also cause more urination, but you would expect that across the board.
Yeah, of course. I understand that. Excellent. So, again, when it comes to these deficiencies for women, are there, you talked about magnesium being that master one. Are there others that you find pretty common for women that we are most often struggling with? And on that same note, do you, obviously without coming to a naturopath and without having the opportunity to work with you specifically, are there general ones that, that you find overall helpful across the board?
Definitely. So the next one may surprise you, Bria, and that is sodium.
Sodium.
Yes, for so long we've been worried. We used to believe low fat was good. And now we know that there are good fats and there's bad fats. And it's not about avoiding fats. It's about making sure you're having plenty of the good and not so much of the bad. It's the same with salt. We have demonized salt for so long, been on low salt diets. And now we're finding there's good salts and there's bad salts. And it depends on the situation. So something that I quite often recommend is that you do a 7-day electrolyte challenge and just see if it makes any difference for you. So this is taking a dose of electrolytes daily for 7 days to see how you feel at the end. I'm yet to meet a woman who hasn't noticed a beneficial change. If you do it and you don't, please contact me. I want to know. There will be people out there someday, but I just haven't met them yet. And they're probably already having enough salts in their diet. But what I'd expect to see over these 7 days is more energy. Isn't that one of the key symptoms that we're experiencing at this stage of life?
Absolutely.
More energy, better clarity of thought. Also, if you're getting those deep muscle cramps, it can help to resolve some of those as well. But most people go, I can't put my finger on it, but I have an increased vitality. Like I just feel better. And that is generally that bit of extra energy.
Amazing. So how the electrolyte challenge, and is there a challenge out there that you run or that you recommend, or is the idea that
it's just something that I recommend that you try for yourself.
Okay.
So when you're looking for an electrolyte, I want a clean product.
Okay.
Actually, the brand that I use is a US brand. It's I personally use Body Bio, and it's a product called E-Lite, E-Lite, LYTE. And it's clean. There is no sugars, no preservatives, no colors, no flavors. It is a concentrate. You just put a cap of it into your glass of water and drink it. Now, the first time you do this, you might go, whoa, that is really salty. And if that's the case, and if you don't like it, reduce the dose. You can even do half a cap twice a day, and that'll still get you the full dose over the day. Or you can get a bigger water bottle and put it in so that it's more
not
diluted.
as noticeable.
Yeah. So the caution that I would say is if your doctor has suggested that you go on a low sodium diet, just go back and have a chat to them before trying. Just say, am I okay to take an electrolyte for 7 days? You've mentioned to be on a low salt diet. I just want to check that it's okay, and find out from them. And another book, if you have been told to be in a low salt diet, same author, Dr. James, it's called The Salt Fix. And he talks about the demonization of salt. He's a cardiovascular researcher. So if anything, think that the research he would find would be saying low salt for cardiovascular health, and he's found it to be the reverse.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Well, it's worth reading and having it as a conversation starter with your healthcare team if that's what you've been told to do. Because I don't know your history. Maybe you definitely are better on a low salt diet.
Yes. But that's
Maybe
why it's
you're not.
important to talk to your primary care physician or whoever it is that your healthcare provider. Is there a time of day that you recommend taking the electrolytes? If you get the pass and you pick up these electrolytes and they're clean.
See, I just take mine in the morning, but it depends on you and your routine. If you do anything that is hot, like if you do Bikram yoga, if you do infrared saunas, if you know you're going on a massive big hike or mountain bike or anything strenuous, I would take the electrolytes before you did that.
Okay.
If you're a sweater, if you know you're having hot flushes, night sweats, what you may not realize is every time you have the experience of sweating, you're losing salt. So in that case, I would be taking half a dose after each sweat just to top your levels back up. Because you don't always know when they're coming. You can't say, right, I'm going to have one in half an hour, or I'll just have my dose now. Well, if you know you have a lot overnight, maybe you have a dose before you go to bed, but I'd just be worried about the amount of fluids that you're drinking.
Of course, interrupting the sleep again.
Yes.
Yeah. Because we see that sleep piece is such a powerful part of our well-being, at any age, but after, especially if you've been a mother, you've probably spent years having a lot of sleepless nights. And now we reach this, beautiful age where many of us have children that are sleeping through the night. And here we are starting to struggle. And it can be really disheartening on women, I think, during this phase of our life.
Yeah. I just wanted to put in another note about electrolytes.
Yeah.
And that is, if you're a menstruating woman, if you're again having those heavier bleeds, longer bleeds, in your blood is more than just iron. Your blood's also fluids, so water, electrolytes, different vitamins and minerals. So I find that if you are having heavier bleeds, you're losing your salts. Again, this is another reason to try and top. I just get concerned women going, I'm taking my iron. It's like, what about everything else?
Yeah, what about all the other things?
B12 is also involved. Vitamin C is involved. Vitamin A is involved. What about everything else? So electrolytes is another key reason to heavy bleeding is another reason to take electrolytes.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And would there be any other, any other one that you would recommend that people don't know about or people don't typically understand, like the way that sodium and magnesium are?
Yeah, there's many of them, but let's chat about zinc, because so many people think about zinc and they think about the immunity. And it definitely is a wonderful mineral for immunity, but that's not the end of the story. Zinc's also needed for all of our special senses. So our sight, our hearing, our smell, our taste. Many women don't know about the hormonal connection. So zinc also helps with hormonal regulation. So it's good for either end of the spectrum. So if you're perimenopause or postmenopause, zinc can help to regulate your hormones. It's also good for skin and mucous membrane. When you think about your mucous membrane, it is just it's a wetter version of your skin. Now, when I think about skin, I think about it as a brick wall where you've got your brick and your mortar to keep your insides in and your outsides out. And I see zinc as being that brick, and I see your essential fatty acids as being that mortar. So many women come in at this stage of life going, oh my God, I look like a teenager again. I've got hormonal acne. Yeah. Maybe they've got rosacea or they've got dryness. Zinc is that key, whether it's skin or mucous membrane, it's that key building block for these healthy membranes. But the other thing to think about it is when we're thinking about mucous membranes, we've got the vagina and you've also got the uterus. So there has been research looking at having adequate zinc, reducing your risk of growths, like fibroids, like polyps. That's something that a lot of women actually struggle with during the transition. So zinc can also help with that. Actually, selenium, there's also been research on selenium helping to reduce fibroids and polyps. There was a really fun research looking at zinc in postmenopausal women, increasing their lubrication and their sexual satisfaction.
I was going to ask you about that.
That's that old link, I think, with oysters, how they used to say that oysters is an aphrodisiac and oysters is one of the key zinc food sources. So it's so nice to see research that sort of goes, well, actually.
Yes, that's amazing. Sometimes we don't even realize how, we already know these things. It hasn't been laid out this way for us, but that makes so much sense about oysters and the zinc. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. But
just keep in mind, what the research is also showing is that you're having multiple mineral deficiencies. So if you're going, oh, zinc, that's me, I'm going to go out and grab myself a bottle. Think about what else is going on. If you've got, the average person has 10 mineral deficiencies. I don't want you taking 10 individual mineral supplements.
Right.
So it's also, if you are struggling, I do think it's worth finding a practitioner. Whether it's myself, whether it's somebody local to you, just to help guide you so that at the end of the day, you don't have a stockpile of products that you're taking.
Right. And a lot of people don't recognize that, as you were saying before, that, many minerals compete for the same receptors. So it is important that you understand. That's why it's worthy to speak to a practitioner like you, that you understand how things are being taken, so you're not just wasting your money or your time or causing any destruction with it.
So zinc and iron is a good example there. So in perimenopause, some women need to take iron because of the heavy bleeds, and they also might want to take zinc because maybe they're having some hormonal acne or rosacea or something like that. These two also bind. They also have they compete for absorption. So you would take them at different times of the day. So there's so many little tips that you can have that it is sometimes better to have someone to hold your hand to make sure that you're doing the right thing at the right time, that you're not creating new problems.
Yes. Yeah. For our, North American listeners and anywhere else, do you take clients online?
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's wonderful to know. And we'll walk everyone through how to best reach Jennifer after this. But I have one more question for you. If that's okay. What is your hormone routine that you would say you do? What are the things that you do every day as sort of your healthy hormone pillars?
I try to walk every day. I have been more successful at this in the past, but I used to live next to an award-winning park. So for me to take lovely big walks in nature, the pond had ducks and it had turtles and eels and stepping stones so you could hop across the stepping stone. Just time in nature and movement. Definitely something that I try to do daily.
And how does that support your hormones?
Well, it also supports my stress levels. And we find that as we're going through the transition, that we have lower resistance to stress. And if you're a woman that's struggling with heat, so hot flushes, night sweats, there's a thing called the thermoneutral zone. And anything in between this zone, we feel comfortable. If you're above it, you feel hot. If you're below it, you feel cold. And what we know is that estrogen helps to keep this level like a decent
regulated
distance apart. So does serotonin.
Anything that's
What
bringing
brings it?
that?
Yeah, that joy, that happiness, that peace. So my walking brings me so much happiness and joy, especially when it's outside in nature. That is helping to reduce my sensations of heat. But what brings it together is actually stress. In particular, the noradrenaline. You guys call it norepinephrine. That brings it closer together so that you're more likely. And a lot of women notice if you are someone that's experiencing hot flushes, add a little bit of stress, boom, you can almost guarantee that you're going to be sweating in no time.
Yeah, it'll get worse. That's, I think, often why, if you drink alcohol, that brings on your cortisol and your higher levels, then you're going to have more hot flashes even at night. Those are simple things that we start to recognize even as we age, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing, Jennifer. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful treat to have you on and share so many powerful things. I cannot believe that stat. What you said, it was from the Mineral Fix, about how 1 in 3 Americans have at least 10 mineral deficiencies. So, I mean, that's enough to blow your mind.
Actually, we didn't go into how you can try and fix that across the board.
Oh, I'd
And
love
sorry
that.
to add
Yeah.
this in at the end.
Oh, do no. I would like to hear that. I know everyone would love to hear that too.
So please have a look for regenerative farms. Regenerative farms focus on soil quality first, and it's the soil where we get our nutrients from. Also, like organic farming, they don't use herbicides, pesticides, nasty chemicals like that.
Mm.
If you can't find regenerative farms, organic farms, they're very, very similar. Just the regenerative farms have a slightly stronger focus on soil quality. There is a website, regenerativefarms.org, where you can pop in your postcode and it can let you know whether there's a farm nearby. Otherwise, you might want to look at a farmer's market if you've got one
Yeah,
near you. That
absolutely.
would be something I'd highly recommend. You might want to test for your environmental pollutants just to see whether you're struggling with heavy metals, if you're struggling with chemicals, if you're struggling with mold, because to detoxify them is really going to set you up well moving forward.
Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah. How do we do that? How do we test for that?
So you'd have to see either a naturopath or a functional doctor
Okay.
to look into that. You can do hair tests to look for metals.
Yeah.
You can do urine tests to look for chemicals. It's the GPL tox test. And you can do a mycotox test to look for mold. But it's also worth, because these aren't necessarily cheap tests, it's worth chatting to a practitioner just to find out what is it that you're most likely to be struggling with, because unfortunately we all live in this toxic soup together. But you might know that you live in a water damaged home. Therefore, mold might be the better avenue to start with. At our age group, we all have lead in our system. Like, we are the lead generation. It was in our paint, it was in our petrol. Some women are effective excretors and can manage to get it out over time. Other women store it. And lead loves to be stored in your bone. What also happens at this stage of life is we start to break down our bones, re-releasing the lead back into the system. And it just depends whether we are good at processing it, metabolizing it, and excreting it, or whether we've got that circulating through the system.
Wow. Yes, I see more and more why it's valuable. Obviously, it's valuable to reach out to someone, especially if you're having a lot of issues and what you've been trying isn't working. It can be very powerful to help someone isolate it, because you can get sort of what we call FOMO, right? That should I try this, or should I try this, or should I try this? And it can be very overwhelming. And what we know is that nothing works if you do it only some of the time. We really need to sort of pick something, experience it, go through it, and be consistent. And that's where I think a practitioner can really help put you on the right path.
Yeah. And I also want to say that there's no practitioner out there who does everything, that I really like the team approach. And a lot of women don't realize that they actually have other options. They might just think they have to go to their primary care practitioner and go down that path. And that's definitely where I started on my journey. That's what I thought I had to do, and that's what I did. And it wasn't in my best interest. And it was for looking through other options that I found what really works for me. And, it might not be naturopathy that works for you. You might want TCM. You might want traditional Chinese medicine. You might want Ayurvedic. You might want homeopathy. There is a plethora of options out there, and what works for you might not work for your best friend, and vice versa. So, there's plenty of options out there. If what you're doing is not working for you, keep trying.
Yeah, because if you stop, then you're kind of stuck, aren't you? So it's an important journey into self to get to know yourself better.
Exactly.
Are there any other avenues to bring us back that you recommend?
I also really love structural care. So whether it's a chiropractor or an acupuncturist or an osteopath, I think just getting some physical maintenance on your body, massage, skin to skin touch, that kind of thing is so important. So if you don't have someone on your team looking after your physical body, have a look what's available in your local area. And there's so many different techniques. Like it might be cranial sacral, or it might be Bowen, or there's so many options. Do you see anyone, Bria? Do you
I
get any
do. I
real-
mean, I do. Yeah. For massage and Reiki is a big thing that I love personally. I mean, especially as an avid fitness person, I find that we don't even realize what's caught up in our muscles and in our energy. So I really do find it to be quite a powerful release. And if I can't seem to get myself to a release, I know that's always the place that, it's just stuck in the body somewhere, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we think about the lymphatic system, like we've got the heart, which pumps the blood, and then we've got the lymphatic system, which is our waste system that collects all our toxins, brings it back to be removed from the body. This doesn't have a pump. It moves by muscular contraction. So if you've got an injury or if you're not moving a certain area, just having someone manually move your muscles just to help to release those toxins is, I think, a good idea.
Well, yeah, what an incredible! I've never really even thought about it that way or had it explained. We have a lot of our systems have a pump, but that lymph system, that organ of elimination, really doesn't. And it's such a big one. It's the biggest one on our body in a way, and it's so powerful to release things. So it needs that stimulation, and how else do we get it? So that's incredible.
Yes, well, most of your listeners are moving, but I know sometimes if we have injury or if, I don't know, we're mainly outside and there's bad weather, you think about what else can you do? And I think massage it's got so many ticks in the box, like skin to skin, movement, and there's just so many different styles. If you want deep tissue, you can have it. If you want gentle, lymphatic, stroking touches, you can do that too.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, to be fair, I think a lot of my listeners are in the north, so it's quite, and you talk about north, any aspect of North America, but north of in the US and all through Canada, I mean, you're talking about people who are covered up a lot of the year, and we don't really get those same benefits, even if we are moving. Amazing. That's a great tip. What else you got?
We could be here all day, couldn't we?
I know. How about one more, and then I'll let you go because I know we're getting
all right. It's going to have to be. It's going to have to be breath work.
Yes. What is your favorite type of breath work that you like to? Because we hear it in so many ways. I mean, it's all sort of diaphragmatic or belly breathing, deep breathing, but there's a lot of different tools and tactics and ways to go about doing it. What's your favorite?
First of all, can I blow your mind?
Yes. I love blowing my mind.
Patrick McKeown has a book, The Art of Breathing or The Art of Breath. I can find it and send you the link for the show note. And he talks about how breath regulates your hormones. And in his book, there's actually a whole I think there's 2 chapters on hormones, one's specific for menopause. So the power of intentional breath. And what they're looking at is ideally looking at 6 breaths a minute. And if we're looking at 6 breaths a minute, if you breathe in your inhalation for the count of 5 and exhalation for the count of 5, that's 10 seconds. So if we do that 6 times, we've got exactly. So my little tip, because I've got a monkey mind, I grab my phone and I put on my timer, and so I can see the seconds count down. And I'm watching it, so I know, okay, I breathe in on 0 and I breathe out on 5. And if you're listening, I guess I was just showing Bria, but I really got the countdown timer going on, and I can see the seconds ticking down. So I know that if I breathe in at 0 and I breathe out when it comes to 5 seconds, I'm on track. And sometimes that is just helpful while you're starting to realize this is actually the length of time. This is going to get me my 6 breaths a minute. And in the research, this is linked with a 52% reduction in hot flushes if you do it for 15 minutes twice a day. So we're not finding big chunks of time. We're finding small little bits of time. And even if you can only do it once a day, I think it was 40-something percent, 42 or 46% reduction.
That's massive.
In those women in the trial. I know.
Yes. That is massive. What was the name of that book that you said Breathwork is what you thought?
I'm going to find the book.
Okay.
It's in my cupboard over there.
I'm so sorry.
And I'll give it to you for the show notes. But it was
wonderful.
Patrick
McEwen, right. Oh, this is the beautiful thing about Audible these days is you can probably just pop in his name in Audible and you'll find it. But oh, that's amazing. You did blow my mind with that. I think I was reading recently in Jay Shetty's book, Think Like a Monk. He talks about how when he's, at the ashram, there was a 10-year-old boy teaching 5-year-old boys on their very first day of monk school. And he said to him, what are you teaching them? Because, when we go to school, we learn our ABCs. And he said, no, what we teach them is how to breathe, because it's the first thing that you start with in life. And it's the last thing that you have. And the value and how much it impacts all of our emotions and everything. So that's so powerful. And I can't believe you did blow my mind. Thank you so much. There we go.
You're welcome.
This has been incredible, Jennifer. Thank you so much for your time, for all your knowledge. I really, really appreciate it. I know the listeners will appreciate it, and we will put together those show notes. But how is the best way for people to connect with you, for the audience to connect with you, or even find your book if they want to learn more or learn from you specifically?
Best place to start is probably my website, which is menopausenaturalsolutions.com. Like Bria, I also have a podcast, same name, Menopause Natural Solutions.
Love it.
My book, From Invisible to Invincible, you can get from my website or possibly from Amazon.
Amazon, yep. It's on Amazon in the US, I can promise that.
Okay. And social media, Menopause Natural Solutions, kept it all the same, so it's easy to find.
Oh, that's incredible. We will put the show notes and the link to the podcast as well in the book in our show notes, your website and the link in our show notes, as well as all of those things. But it's been such a pleasure. I'm so grateful to get to know you better, to spread this message with you more. And thank you for all that you do.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Have a wonderful day.